It's strange how a person can appear calm on the outside while feeling as if the ground inside never quite stops moving. Many people believe emotional balance comes from controlling life, yet it often begins the moment we stop trying to outrun ourselves. If you've ever felt tired of bracing for the next wave, even on peaceful days, you're not alone, though it can feel that way. There's a quiet relief in discovering that safety isn't something you must earn from the world, but something you can learn to grow within. And the story you're about to hear begins exactly where that realization first whispers. This is not a tale about becoming unshakable, but about learning how to return after being shaken. About a person who believed something inside them was permanently off balance, until a small, almost forgettable encounter changed the way they listened to their own heart. You might recognize pieces of yourself in the pauses, the doubts, the tiny practices that seem too simple to matter, yet somehow do. Because sometimes the deepest stability doesn't arrive like a solution, but like a memory of something you once knew. So, before we begin, just notice your breathing for a moment, as if you're already stepping into a quieter room. He often felt as if the floor inside him had been built on quiet waves, shifting when no one else could see. Even on calm mornings, his shoulders stayed slightly raised, like a traveler waiting for distant thunder. Friends would laugh, the room warm and ordinary, yet a small part of him kept watch by the door. It wasn't fear exactly, more like never quite setting his bags down. He couldn't remember when he last felt fully at home within his own chest. At night, he would sit on the edge of the bed, listening to the refrigerator hum as if it were a signal. His thoughts paced in slow circles, checking windows that were already locked. If a memory brushed past, an old criticism, a sharp word, a look of disappointment, his pulse would answer first. The body, it seemed, believed every echo was happening again. And he wondered quietly why rest felt like something meant for other people. On his desk stood a small brass pendulum he'd found at a street market years ago. When the room was still, it barely moved, just a faint trembling as if remembering motion. But if someone shut a door down the hall, it would swing wide, startled into life. He sometimes watched it longer than he meant to, sensing a private kinship. It was strange how something so small could mirror the weather inside him. What he longed for wasn't excitement or even happiness. Not really. He wanted the simple luxury of exhaling without scanning the horizon afterward. To sit in a chair and feel the chair holding him, nothing more required. To trust a quiet moment without waiting for it to crack. He suspected this was what people meant when they spoke of peace, though he'd never quite caught it. One evening, as the pendulum swayed again from a distant clatter, a question slipped in softly. What if safety wasn't a place that could be guarded, but a room built somewhere inward? What if the ground he kept searching for outside had been waiting under his own feet all along? He let the thought hover there, uncertain, almost shy, and without realizing it, he began to wonder who might know how to find such a place. In the days that followed, he began noticing how quickly he distrusted his own feelings. If calm appeared, he questioned it. If joy flickered, he braced for the fall. It was as though his heart were a guest he never fully let inside. The pendulum on his desk kept swinging at the slightest tremor, faithful to every disturbance. Watching it, he wondered when he had decided that vigilance was safer than trust. He started to suspect that balance wasn't something you wrestled into place. Perhaps it was more like teaching a startled animal that your hands meant no harm. When a wave of sadness rose, he tried, awkwardly at first, to simply notice it without pushing. He would rest his palm on the desk, feel the solid wood, and breathe once, slowly. The feeling didn't disappear, but it stopped growing teeth. A quiet idea took root. Maybe safety grew from acceptance, not defense. The more he resisted his own storms, the more violently they seemed to circle back. But when he allowed a moment to be messy without fixing it, something softened at the edges. The pendulum still moved, yet its arc shortened, as if tiring of its old urgency. He caught himself thinking that stability might be a skill, not a miracle. He began practicing tiny returns to himself throughout the day. While waiting for the kettle to boil, he'd feel his feet pressing into the floor. When a sharp email arrived, he'd pause before reading it again, letting the first sting pass through. These were hardly heroic gestures, more like quiet handrails along a narrow path. Still, they hinted that he could come back to center, even after being nudged away. The realization didn't arrive with fireworks, just a gentle settling. Balance, he sensed, wasn't about never swaying, but about knowing the way home. The pendulum would always move. That was its nature. What mattered was whether something steady existed at the point where it hung. And somewhere beyond this fragile understanding, he felt there might be someone who had lived it fully. There were mornings when he woke already exhausted, as if he had been running through dreams all night. A kind message could lift him suddenly, almost too high, only for a small inconvenience to drop him just as fast. He noticed how people around him hesitated, unsure which version of him would walk into the room. Even he couldn't predict it, and that uncertainty became its own quiet weight. The pendulum on his desk seemed to understand, swinging in wide, uneven arcs. At work, he tried to appear steady, nodding at conversations he barely absorbed. A careless remark from a colleague could echo for hours, replaying in different tones. He would step into the restroom just to breathe, palms pressed against the cool sink. Sometimes he whispered a single sentence under his breath. "It's just a moment," as if convincing a frightened child. Still, the ground inside him tilted without warning. Relationships felt like walking on a narrow bridge during strong winds. If someone grew distant, his mind filled the silence with imagined endings. If they moved closer, he worried he might disappoint them once they saw the chaos he carried. So he laughed a little too quickly, apologized a little too often, stayed agreeable to avoid sudden storms. Later, alone, he wondered who he might have been without all that careful balancing. What troubled him most was the suspicion that something inside had cracked long ago. Other people seemed to bend and return, while he kept splintering in the same places. He studied his reflection sometimes, searching for signs of where the damage showed. The pendulum, restless as ever, clicked softly against its stand like a small, stubborn clock. It felt less like an object now, and more like a confession he hadn't spoken aloud. One evening, after a day that had swung from hope to heaviness and back again, he left the apartment just to walk. The air carried that quiet hush that comes before streetlights fully glow. He didn't know where he was going, only that staying still felt harder than moving. Somewhere ahead, he noticed a figure seated calmly on a bench, as if waiting without impatience, and something about that stillness made him slow down, though he couldn't yet explain why. As days passed, the pendulum became less like decoration and more like a quiet companion. He noticed how even his footsteps across the room could set it trembling. If a car door slammed outside, it would swing sharply, protesting the disturbance. He began to test it, tapping the desk lightly, watching how quickly it lost composure. It was unsettling to realize how familiar that reaction felt. He carried it once to the kitchen, curious whether a different room would calm it. But the smallest vibration from the refrigerator motor stirred it again into motion. It didn't matter where he placed it. The sensitivity traveled with it. He stood there holding the cool brass, wondering if people were the same way. Perhaps the unrest wasn't in the world, but in the way it resonated inside. One afternoon, he set it near the open window, hoping fresh air might steady it. Instead, a passing breeze sent it swaying in wide, helpless arcs. He almost laughed then, a soft, tired sound, at how dramatic something so small could be. Yet the humor faded when he realized he had spent years reacting just as quickly. No wonder he felt worn, like a bell rung too often. Still, there was something oddly comforting in seeing his inner chaos made visible. The pendulum didn't pretend to be calm when it wasn't. It simply moved. He found himself sitting beside it during difficult moments, matching his breath to its slowing rhythm. Inhale as it reached one side, exhale as it returned. Sometimes, after a minute or two, both of them would settle at once. Late one evening, while the city softened into distant murmurs, the pendulum finally stilled, not frozen, just quietly centered, as if remembering its original purpose. He leaned closer, almost afraid to breathe too loudly and break the fragile peace. For the first time, he wondered whether stillness was something learned rather than granted, and the thought made him recall the calm stranger on the bench, waiting somewhere in memory. The next evening, he found himself drifting back to the same street, almost without deciding to. The bench was still there, and so was the quiet figure, hands resting loosely on a cane. There was nothing remarkable about the person at first glance, just a steadiness that didn't advertise itself. When their eyes met, the stranger offered a small nod, as if greeting someone expected. He sat down at the far end, surprised by how the air seemed calmer near them. For a while they watched the evening settle, saying nothing at all. Usually silence made him restless, but this one felt like a blanket instead of a void. He noticed his breathing matching the slow rhythm of the person beside him. Even the noise of passing cars seemed to lower its voice out of respect. It was the first time in months that he didn't feel the urge to scan for danger. "You carry a storm that hasn't learned where to land," the stranger said gently, still facing forward. There was no accusation in it, only recognition, like someone naming a familiar bird. He almost apologized out of habit, then stopped, unsure why he would. The cane traced a small circle in the dust, patient, unhurried. "Balance isn't never falling," the voice continued. "It's knowing the path back when you do." He told them, haltingly, about the pendulum on his desk and how it wouldn't stay still. The stranger listened as though each word were worth holding, not fixing. When he finished, they smiled in a way that felt warm, but not indulgent. "Sensitive things move easily," they said, "but they can also learn where center is." The idea settled between them like a cup of tea, gently steaming in cool air. Before leaving, the stranger pressed their palm briefly against the bench, inviting him to do the same. "Feel that?" they asked, as he noticed the solid wood beneath his hand. "It doesn't chase stillness. It simply remains, and everything else slows around it." He kept his hand there a moment longer, surprised by how grounding something so simple could be. As he walked home, he wondered what else that calm presence might reveal if he returned. Many of the stories you hear here aren't just stories. They reflect the invisible weight you may be carrying every day. If you're tired of holding pain, responsibility, and guilt that were never yours, I created an ebook called "The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours and More 2 Bonus for You." It's for those who want to let go, set boundaries, and live with more lightness. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. When he returned to the bench the following day, the stranger greeted him with the same quiet nod. It felt less like meeting someone new and more like stepping back into a place that remembered him. Without preamble, they asked him to stand still for a moment, right there on the pavement. He felt faintly self-conscious, glancing around, but their calm made the world seem uninterested in watching. "Just notice the ground," they said softly, as if offering a small, practical kindness. At first he noticed nothing but the awkwardness of standing there. Then, slowly, the pressure of his feet became clear, the steady support he had ignored all day. "Your body already knows how to be held," the stranger murmured. "Safety begins when you allow yourself to feel what isn't moving." He exhaled, surprised by how long he had been holding his breath without realizing it. They showed him how to slow his breathing, not forcing it, just letting it lengthen like a yawn. Inhale as if drawing warmth into the chest, exhale as though setting something heavy down. A passing memory tried to pull him away, but they gently tapped the bench, bringing him back. "Returning is the practice," they said. "Not escaping, not fixing, returning." The simplicity of it felt almost suspicious, yet undeniably soothing. That evening at home, he sat before the pendulum and tried the same thing. When it began to sway from a distant vibration, he placed his feet firmly on the floor. He let his gaze soften, breathing slowly, as if the air itself were steadying him. The movement didn't stop immediately, but it lost its urgency, like a story running out of reasons. For the first time, he sensed that calm could be built, not borrowed. He understood then that the stranger hadn't given him a cure, but a refuge he could carry, a place inside that didn't depend on quiet rooms or kind circumstances. He practiced returning to it again and again, sometimes clumsily, sometimes with ease. Each attempt felt like lighting a small lamp in a house long left dim, and he began to wonder how different life might feel if that light stayed on. In the weeks that followed, he practiced in small, almost invisible ways. When a sharp memory surfaced, he would pause and feel his feet before answering it. When loneliness crept in during quiet evenings, he rested a hand over his chest and breathed once, slowly. The waves still came, but they no longer carried him as far from shore. Even the pendulum's swings began to look less like panic and more like motion returning home. He noticed spaces appearing between reactions, thin at first, then widening gently. A rude comment from a stranger stung, yet the pain didn't linger like it once had. He would step aside, touch a wall or the back of a chair, reminding himself of what was solid. Sometimes he whispered, almost with a hint of humor, "Easy now, we're not in a storm." To his surprise, the body listened more often than not. Sleep came a little easier too, as if his nervous system had lowered its guard. On restless nights, he would sit up, place both feet on the floor, and wait for stillness to find him. The pendulum, visible in the dim light, seemed calmer as well, its movement smaller, patient. He began to think of it not as fragile but as responsive, like a compass learning true north. The change was subtle enough that others might not have noticed, but he did. There were setbacks, of course, days when everything tilted again without warning. Yet even then, he remembered the path back, the quiet refuge he could rebuild in minutes. Returning became less of an emergency and more of a familiar gesture, like straightening a picture frame that had been nudged out of alignment. Each time he did, a little more trust settled into place. One afternoon, he realized he had gone several hours without checking for danger inside himself. The absence of tension felt strange, almost like forgetting a habit he once depended on. He watched the pendulum resting nearly still, sunlight glinting softly on its surface. It no longer looked like a confession, just an object fulfilling its quiet purpose. And he wondered how this newfound steadiness might hold when life inevitably tested it again. The test arrived on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that usually passed without memory. A message appeared on his phone, brief and sharp, carrying the familiar tone of disappointment. Once, it would have sent his thoughts spiraling into apology and quiet shame. He felt the first tremor rise, that old internal shifting, but this time he didn't rush to answer it. He set the phone down and placed both feet on the floor, just as he had practiced. The room seemed to pause with him, as if curious what he would choose next. He let his breath slow, noticing the steady weight of his body in the chair. The feeling didn't vanish, yet it stopped growing louder. For a moment, he sensed the calm center waiting beneath the noise. When he finally picked up the phone again, his reply was simple and clear. No over-explaining, no anxious softening, just honest words that didn't abandon himself. He expected a surge of guilt afterward, but it didn't arrive. Instead, there was a quiet relief, like stepping onto solid ground after uncertain footing. He realized he had stayed present without losing balance. Later, meeting a friend for coffee, he noticed how easily he listened without bracing. Their laughter didn't feel like something he had to earn or protect. When a difficult topic surfaced, he felt the tension rise and fall like a passing cloud. The pendulum at home would probably have swayed once or twice, then settled again. Something inside him had learned the rhythm of returning. People began to respond differently, though no one could quite say why. They lingered a little longer in conversation, trusted his silence without filling it. It was as if his steadiness gave others permission to exhale too. He didn't think of himself as strong, just less afraid of his own weather. And quietly, he wondered how many unseen storms might calm if someone showed them this way back. One evening, as they sat together on the bench, the stranger spoke as if to both him and the quiet air. "Anyone can return to center," they said, drawing a slow line in the dust with the cane. They invited him to place both feet flat on the ground, not stiffly, just enough to feel contact. "Notice where your body meets the world," they added, voice gentle as dusk settling in. He realized how rarely he allowed himself to feel something so simple. They asked him to take one slow breath, then another, like pouring water into a glass without spilling. As he did, they encouraged him to name, silently, one place that had once felt safe. Not perfect, just steady. A quiet room, a childhood corner, even a memory of warm sunlight. He chose a moment by a lake years ago, the surface still as polished glass. The image returned easily, carrying a calm he hadn't known he could revisit. "Your mind will wander," the stranger said with a faint smile. "That's just what minds do. Each time it does, bring it back the way you'd guide a sleepy child home." He tried again when a worry surfaced, gently returning to the imagined lake. The pendulum of his thoughts slowed, not forced, just gradually persuaded. He felt a small, unexpected tenderness toward himself. They suggested using this practice whenever emotions rose too quickly, in a crowded room, during a difficult conversation, even while waiting at a red light. No one else would notice, yet the shift inside could be immediate. A single breath, a remembered place, the quiet acknowledgement of being held by the ground. Such small gestures, they hinted, were often the ones people forgot first. As the sky deepened into evening, he sensed that this simple ritual was meant for more than just him. Like a lantern passed from one traveler to another along a dark path, he imagined someone, somewhere, placing their feet on the floor and breathing as he had. The thought carried a warmth that spread quietly through his chest. And he wondered how different the world might feel if more people remembered this hidden doorway. Much later, after the seasons had turned almost without him noticing, he returned alone to the lake from his memory. The water lay still beneath a pale sky, holding the clouds without trying to keep them. He sat on the shore and felt that familiar steadiness rise, not borrowed this time, but grown. It occurred to him that nothing in the landscape was forcing calm. It simply allowed it. For the first time, he trusted that the same permission existed within him. He thought of all the places he had searched for safety before learning to build it inward. Rooms, routines, people, promises, each one helpful, yet never quite enough. Now he understood that balance wasn't a wall against the world, but a quiet anchor inside it. The pendulum at home would still move when doors slammed or storms rolled in, but it would always remember where center waited. A breeze passed over the lake, scattering small ripples across the surface. He watched them travel outward, fade, and leave the water clear again. No panic, no resistance, just movement completing its own story. It struck him that emotions might be meant to behave the same way, allowed to pass, not chased or trapped. As evening light softened, the lake became a mirror, sky and water indistinguishable. He saw his reflection there, not perfectly steady, but no longer afraid of the motion. Safety, he realized, was simply the ability to remain present without abandoning himself, to feel deeply without losing the thread that led back home. The insight settled quietly, like a stone placed gently on solid ground. When he finally stood to leave, the world didn't look different, yet he did. He carried a stillness that didn't depend on quiet places or kind weather. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed, and he felt the old reflex stir, then soften, like a pendulum completing a small, harmless arc before resting again. And as he walked on, the path ahead seemed less like something to survive and more like something to meet.